Seth Makemer from the Blazing Musket. It's a new season of Major League Soccer. We are once again joined by MLS Apple personality. This time is Callum Williams, someone who has extensive career broadcasting this league, Sporting Kansas City, also Minnesota United. Now with the league, now with Apple, he will be on the call this weekend along with Kalen Carr when the New England Revolution faces DC United. Callum, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for the introduction there, Seth. Going way back to the Sporting Kansas City days. There aren't so many people left in the league that know that, so I appreciate the introduction.
I had to get the information right because I stumbled over some of the words. So that's the least I can do. At least get the information right.
No, you're grand, mate. You're grand. It's been a long old time actually. I continue to think about it. Actually, this is my 14th year covering Major League Soccer. And I remember coming over here when I was 21 to be the voice of Sporting KC. I left the BBC and got all sorts of abuse for doing so, but it turned out to be the best decision of my life, really, because it meant a move to the US and discovering the beauty of North American soccer and also the chaos of it. Yeah, it's been great. It's been really good. And now, as you mentioned, with Apple TV, after 6 wonderful years with Minnesota United, another club that's really close to my heart. But it's been good, mate. Apple TV has been really good, and I'm excited to see what the season has in store for us. And as you mentioned, starting at Audi Field on Saturday.
Yeah, and you've been around for a long time. You've seen a lot of different versions of Major League Soccer. It feels like we're in an era that's very exciting. There's a player named Messi who's a pretty high profile. A lot of people know about him, but I just think in general, we're seeing a lot of talented players, young players, some skillful players. What are you most excited about as we head into this 29th season for Major League Soccer?
I think the thing is, Seth, I'm really, and I did a piece on the radio in the UK yesterday, a radio station called Talk Sport, and I'll say the exact same that I said to them to you. It's just the trajectory of the league and the sport in this country. We all kind of knew, those of us degenerates and diehards that have been in it since not day one, but for a long time. We kind of always assumed and thought that it would go like this, and we would get to this stage at some stage. But I don't think any of us thought we'd be here this early. And so having somebody like Messi here obviously changes the whole trajectory of it, doesn't it? And it changes the perception for some people. But I'm just excited for some of the young players that continue to make their way over to the league. Yeah, it's always great, obviously, having players like Messi and Suarez and Busquets and what have you. But honestly, for me, Seth, I'm a big South American football nut. I covered the Copa Libertadores for 3 years and did 3 finals and saw a lot of really young, exciting South American players. So anytime I see some of those players linked with moves to MLS, that's when I get excited. Pedro de la Vega of the Sounders was somebody that I'd seen for Lanús, and so got very excited when I saw he was coming. Thomas Chancalay, I have done his games when he was playing for Racing Club. Tremendous business by the Revs to bring him in, and obviously he did so well that they thought they'd bring him in permanently. So yeah, I'm very excited. It's a league that I think, honestly, if you put this league just about anywhere in Europe and it wasn't situated in North America, if we can make that happen somehow, I don't think people would think twice about calling it a top 10 league in the world. If this league was situated in, let's say, Belgium or Austria or the Netherlands, so many people would view this league so much better. And I think we're getting there across world football, and but I don't particularly care what people think about the league in England or Europe or what have you. But it's such a good league now. I personally have no issue calling it a top 10 league in world football. There are so many leagues around the world that would kill to have what Major League Soccer has available to it, and so I'm just excited again. And look, the Apple TV partnership is at the centre of that as well. There are so many leagues around the world kill for a partnership like this, so it's fantastic to be a part of. But once again, Seth, I'm just excited for another season of Major League Soccer where really none of us have any idea what to expect and what's going on. I mean, who on earth would have crowned Columbus Crew as champions last year? They've done wonderfully. Wilfred Nancy's a genius, but nobody going into the season had Columbus Crew as champions, and dare I say, we'll have something similar again this year.
Callum, you mentioned it. Everything this season for Major League Soccer is going to be on MLS Season Pass. This weekend is free, and I'm sure I'll mention it again at the end of the podcast here. But really important for Revolution fans that they know that this weekend's game is free. But even if you don't know that, you should probably get the whole pass, right? There's so many opportunities to watch so many great games. You also mentioned the idea that someone like you, someone like me, we're a little bit of MLS sickos. We've been watching this league for a very long time. Last night we were watching CONCACAF games, taking in the New England Revolution down in Panama, taking that 1-0 win. What did you take away from that game from the New England Revolution perspective?
Um, you're right. We are sickos, aren't we? Because whilst everybody else in the world was watching Messi in Miami, we were watching the Revs playing in Panama. So, look, I think what I took away from it, Seth, was that it was a very resolute, a very disciplined performance from the Revs. I thought it was a situation that it gave them an element of structure. I'm very excited to see what I mean, we're not going to see a proper iteration of it until a couple of weeks' time, I'm sure. But I am very interested to see what a Caleb Porter New England Revolution looks like, because honestly, for me, this is it's gone under the radar a little bit. His appointments, because there's 8 new head coaches in the league, and some of them are with all due respect to Caleb Porter, bigger names. And so his appointment's gone under the radar a little bit. But actually, I think it's one of the most astute pieces of business that we've seen in Major League Soccer this off-season. He's a championship caliber coach. He's won MLS twice with 2 different teams in the space of 5 years. For me, I think New England Revolution, that they're going to be a playoff team again. They have all the tools at their disposal. I think, in my opinion, Seth, the Revs are legitimately just one piece, maybe 2 pieces away from being towards first place in the Eastern Conference, if not challenges for MLS Cup. The big question, really, well, there's 2 questions really at the moment, aren't there? It is so the new goalkeeper Ravas. We don't know. We have to wait a few weeks, I guess, to see what really his quality level is, because he's got some gloves to replace, hasn't he, Petrovic? And then the other question really is Giacomo Brioni going to be the goal scorer that the Revs need? Because the supporting cast are marvellous. And my word, had they have added Albert Elise, by the way, I think the Revs would have been a completely different proposition. So obviously that deal didn't happen, which is a shame. But it's not like the Revs even needed someone like that, because Wolfie Lamparero comes back as well. That 3 supporting cast behind Brioni is going to be absolutely sensational, providing Carlos Gil obviously stayed clear of injury, and he's the player that we know he is. And so I'm just excited to see what the Revs can do this year, because honestly, for me, I do think they are. The Revs always go under the radar for whatever reason. But for me, honestly, I think the Revs have to be considered one of the favourites for the Eastern Conference this year.
You mentioned it was really interesting because obviously we saw some turnover in the coaching staff and in the front office, Bruce Arena leaving. But in terms of personnel, it's a lot of the same players. They bring in Nick Lima, they bring in Ravas, they bring in Mensah, but it's a lot of the same type of players that we've seen in the past. Yep. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because the team was second in the Eastern Conference until that late kind of breakdown that happened last year. You mentioned the idea of bringing in a player or 2, and they might be a player or 2 away. Let's put you in the seat of Kurt Onafo. If you are the GM for this team, and we've recently seen that this team is trading away some assets in order to get general allocation money. And we also know that they came very close to adding Albert Elise, right? That, like you mentioned right there. If you're the sporting director, if you're Kurt Onafo, where is the area that you're looking to improve? Or is it more like wait and see what happens during this early part of the season?
Yeah, I think it's the latter, Seth, to be honest, because I think the Revs are so strong right now, at least in the starting 11. For me, I think it's a case of wait and just see what's available, because, I'm hearing some names over the world footballing sphere, if you will, that are very, very ready to make a move to Major League Soccer. And these are not names to sniff at, by the way. These are names that I think once they're done playing in the Euros, once they're done playing in the Copa America, they may very well fancy a move to Major League Soccer. So I think also the one area that I would say, like I kind of insinuated a little earlier on, Seth, the one area that is it's sort of up for debate, but we have to wait, it is that centre forward role for the Revs. I think Giacomo Brioni has earned the right to make it his. But the question is, how long do you give it? 9 goals in all competitions last year. And I was doing some number crunching this morning, actually. I think I think myself and Kalen Carr saw about 6 of them actually. So I didn't realise he hadn't scored that many until I was doing the numbers this morning. I just assumed it was a regular thing. But he look, he comes in with a good pedigree, and when he was playing at TSV Teichol in Austria, he was scoring goals for fun, and so I think he deserves the opportunity of a couple of months. But then if it doesn't start well, if it doesn't go well over the course of, when does the window close? April, I believe, late April. Maybe then that's when the Revs kind of start thinking about making a summer move of some sort. Major League Soccer is a very, very attractive league now, Seth. Every time I go back to the UK, there's people asking about it, and I'm not just talking about mates in the pub. I'm talking about Premier League footballers. I'm talking about agents who are asking, what's it like? I've got a couple of players that are thinking about it. And I've said before, mate, it's akin to the Championship in the UK, and by no means is that an insult. Championship was voted top 8 league in the world, I believe, a year or so ago. And in some cases, MLS is better, in my opinion, as well. The training facilities certainly are. So, going slightly off topic here, but for me, I do think I think the Revs just perhaps need to wait a little bit. But isn't it saying something that Caleb Porter looked at the group and said to himself, I don't think I need to add too much here. As you mentioned, brought in Nick Lima to cover for Brandon Bai, which, by the way, that's a signing, by the way, because Nick Lima, it wasn't too long ago, he was playing regularly for the national team. He started 25 games for Austin last year. And I know it wasn't a great year for Austin, but there's no way someone like Nick Lima is going to come in and accept being a backup player. So that in itself is a testament to how strong the Revs team is this year. So very, very interested to see. And like I said, Seth, I think they have to be considered one of the top 3 teams in the East right now.
Yeah, you mentioned the idea of Giacomo Veroni, and I think that's the name that a lot of New England Revolution fans are talking about. I asked Caleb Porter last night how things are going with Giacomo Veroni, and he said, it's going to take some time, that he's doing well right now, and that if you look back, there really wasn't an opportunity for Giacomo Veroni to get a consistent stretch of games with everyone on the field. And this is his opportunity to do that. And I think that exactly what you said, that he deserves an opportunity to show things off. And you also mentioned the idea that this is now Caleb Porter's team. And we're trying to figure out, what does a Caleb Porter New England Revolution side look like? And I've been kind of posting that we're seeing things like balls on the ground a little bit more as opposed to aerial balls, although we certainly saw some of those last night, cutback balls. I also thought we saw a little bit more from Giacomo Veroni in the air last night. He had that header that hit the crossbar. We also saw him have that one that went off his head that became a primary assist for Chancale's very well taken goal. So it makes me really wonder if we're going to see a little bit different of a Giacomo Veroni, because last preseason, if you go back, he really wasn't getting a lot of time with the first team players. So even during preseason, that wasn't happening. But it sounds like he has the support of Caleb Porter. It sounds like he's going to get the opportunity. So I agree with you that it makes sense to have a wait and see type of situation with a player like that.
Yeah, I hope so, because as we said, I think he's deserving of the opportunity. But also the thing is as well, Seth, I mean, look, what we have seen in Major League Soccer as well is that things can change very, very quickly. All of a sudden, let's play a little bit of game here. Let's be chaos insinuates for a moment, shall we? And let's just say that Leonardo Campana has had enough of sitting on the bench at Miami, and all of a sudden, if I'm the Revs, if I'm half the teams in Major League Soccer, I'm very interested. But if I was New England Revolution, I would absolutely be looking at the possibility of bringing somebody like that in. So. It just depends. MLS is so fluid. The window, to my knowledge, doesn't close until I think it's April 23rd or 4th. So I think there's opportunities to bring people in, but they have to be the right people as well. And Caleb Porter said this before when he was at Columbus Crew, but I don't just want to bring in players just for the sake of it. They have to be the right players. And so, honestly, like I said earlier on, Seth, I think his appointment has gone under the radar a little bit. But I'm very interested to see, after a couple of weeks, what a New England Revolution Caleb Porter side look like. Is it going to be a little more rigid? Is it going to be free-flowing? Is it going to be sort of counter-pressing? I tell you, the game on Saturday is going to be very, very interesting against DC, because we spoke to Troy Lesane earlier today, And I think, given what he accomplished at Red Bull, I think all of us in the media were quite surprised he didn't get the job full time. But he was saying he was prepared for it. Told us he interviewed for the Revs job, interviewed for the Charlotte job, which I don't think is breaking news. I think it was obvious. But DC gave him the opportunity. Ali McKay and him, I guess, hit it off straight away, which is great. But I think his style of football is going to be very much that Rasen Bull type football, that high press, no nonsense, sort of making the opposition backline a bit uncomfortable. And so I'm interested to see how Caleb Porter addresses that. If indeed that is, the way that he plays, that's certainly the insinuation. Is it going to be Farrell and Romney at centre half? I don't see why it wouldn't be. But how comfortable are they on the ball with, let's just say it's Cudi Pietro pressing at them as quickly as he can? The new lad, Pirani, who came in from Santos, I think is eager to prove a point as well. And, how quickly can they get the ball away from someone like him, So I think the Revs, the last thing I would do if I was Caleb Porter is play out of the back. But we've seen stranger things in Major League Soccer. So we'll wait and see. But I think this game against DC United, I know it's only the first game, but I think it's a really tough challenge for the Revs.
So, Callum, you mentioned it. You're going to see this New England Revolution team up close and personal this weekend on Saturday at 7:30. It's going to be an interesting one because obviously on Wednesday, the Revolution played. DC United not in that situation. After the game, Caleb Porter said that he's going to assess his team, that there probably are going to be some players that are ready to go, but there also probably is going to be some rotation. I'm curious from your perspective, who's a player that maybe you're looking for? I know Eshmir Baraktarovic is a name that a lot of people are talking about right now. Sounds like he could maybe get the start because Nacho Heel started on Wednesday. Ian Harkes being a very talented player, son of John Harkes, another player that I'm pretty high on, as well as Noah Buck, someone who's getting interest over in Europe. So there are some options on the bench. Who's someone that you might expect to jump in this weekend and do well for the New England Revolution?
Yeah, everybody that you mentioned there, Seth. I think Baraktarovic coming in is an obvious one. I was surprised he didn't start actually down in Panama because the way Caleb Porter was talking about him in a press conference that I'm sure you were in, it kind of insinuated that he was going to be a regular first-team player, and I think he will. Maybe Caleb Porter just wanted to give Nacho Gil an opportunity. I don't know, but would agree as well that Noel Buck and Harkes would come into the centre of midfield. But again, it's hard, isn't it? Because I wouldn't necessarily want to drop either Kay or Polster either, because they're both a handful. I'm a big fan of Mark Anthony Kay. I don't know anyone that doesn't like him. The other one, which I think perhaps we need to start thinking about, I wonder if Jonathan Mensah comes in at centre half. There's a lot of miles on the legs of good old Andrew Farrell. He's not a young whippersnapper anymore, is he? Romney's 30 as well. But I just wonder if Andrew Farrell or Romney, in that sense, I guess, make way and Jonathan Mensah comes in. Obviously, he's somebody that Caleb Porter rates very highly, worked with him at Columbus Crew, bought him in from San Jose after a season in Northern California there. And at the age of 33, this is why he's on the roster, is to come in and fill these gaps in these types of moments. So that wouldn't surprise me at all. I have no insider knowledge or anything there, Seth. I'm just merely speculating, but that wouldn't surprise me at all if Jonathan Mensah came in and started at centre half.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for some of those guys to prove something. Henry Kessler coming back from a mild hamstring injury. Maybe he's ready for some minutes this weekend as well. But obviously, he's had hamstring issues in the past. So do you really want to rush him in that situation? You watched the game last night. I'm really curious. When you call a game, it's interesting, right? Sometimes you're doing it solo. Sometimes you're doing with a partner. I remember I was talking to one of your colleagues last year, and he was talking about how one time a bird came into the press box during a game, and it was a really hard situation. Last night, there was a great commentator that was on, George D. Metellus, I believe his name is. And he had a little bit of fun with the pronunciation, talking about how Mitt Romney is a distant cousin or a relative of David Romney. Also talking about how Bobby Wood is no good for defending opposing defenders. I'm curious, Callum, you've done this for a very long time. What are some fun stories that you have about calling games, whether it's something that was unexpected, or maybe you got roused a little bit for, not saying the right name or miscalling or mispronouncing the name. What happened in your career that's a little bit of fun of a story?
Well, a few things before I get into a story. Number one, you won't, and I apologise to the Revs fans that enjoyed George last night. I know George because he was a part of the Libertadores commentary team that I was on a couple of years ago, and he's an excellent broadcaster. But you won't find any rapping or any political references in my commentary, unfortunately. So, might have to disappoint a couple of Revs fans there. But pronunciation is a big one for me, Seth. I think it's. I think it's borderline disrespectful if we're not saying players' names the right way. I think because at the end of the day, in my opinion, as broadcasters, our primary objective is to deliver correct information. And if you're not saying someone's name the right way, then technically you're delivering incorrect information. And so I also have a friend of mine whose name I'll spare for the moment. In England, he was commentating on a Premier League game, and there was a player that came on, 18-year-old player that came on for their Premier League debut, and he had done the research, but wasn't entirely sure on his name. And so the player came on. I think it was for West Ham. 18-year-old. Scored on his Premier League debut or FA Cup or something along those lines. Either way, it was his West Ham United debut. And my pal completely and utterly butchered his name. And his family were around the television watching, and there's a horrible story of, I think it's his uncle or something that was watching the game, and he said, it was an amazing moment, incredible. Everyone's so happy that my nephew has scored a goal and what have you. But unfortunately, it's always going to be slightly overshadowed by the fact the commentator got the name wrong. And I don't ever want to be that commentator. I think it's incredibly important. I think it's incredibly important to also pronounce the names that the players want it. So it doesn't matter if there's an English version of it. We have to respect family names. We have to respect tradition. And we as MLS Apple TV commentators got into a bit of a debate about this on Monday when we had a sort of an all-staff meeting, and we all agreed that it's best served for everybody if you say the name the way that the player wants it said. And so, for example, there's one that I learned during the course of the meeting. Player that now plays for Orlando, had several years at Seattle, Nicolas Lodeiro. For years, people were calling him Lodeiro, and he had done an audio pronunciation where he said himself, Nicolas Lodeiro, but actually his preference is Lodeiro. So moving forward, he is absolutely going to be Nicolas Lodeiro. And so I just think it's important. It's a sign of respect, to get players' names right. So it's also a basic fundamental of the job of being a football commentator as well, in my opinion. But in terms of stories, Seth, how long have we got? There's been a handful of situations that were very uncomfortable. Like, I'll always remember ironically going to DC when they played at RFK Stadium, and there was a wasp nest in the corner of the commentary box. I'm not entirely sure there were too many commentary teams, away teams, traveling at that stage. That was back in, it must have been 2011, 2012. And so we had to get the pest exterminator or whatever into the building to get rid of the wasp nest. Otherwise, we weren't going to be able to do the broadcast. So that was an interesting one. I remember when I was about, what age would I have been? I would have been about 18 years old. I was doing a commentary on Shrewsbury Town away at Grimsby Town. And that was League Two at the time, I believe, in Grimsby. And I was doing radio that day. So the press box in Grimsby, it has two tiers. The top tier is all the written press. The bottom tier is all the radio commentators, which are spaced out appropriately. And one of the the poor newspaper journalists that day said he was feeling a bit sick. He didn't feel particularly great. And I think the offering of food that day was something like an egg sandwich, something to really settle the stomach, And so we were, I think, maybe about 90 seconds from going on the air. So there's myself, There's the presenter, the radio host to my left. There's the my co-coms to the right of me. And I think we're about 60 or 90 seconds away from going on air. And I was doing the game for local commercial radio in the town of Shrewsbury, and the local BBC radio commentary were to the left of us. Above them, unfortunately, was the newspaper journalist that said he wasn't feeling very well. And so about 90 seconds to go on the air, all of a sudden we hear a bit of hurling and a bit of heaving, and this newspaper journalist vomited everywhere, including in front of him, which meant the BBC local radio guys that were already on the air got a load of vomit on the back of their heads and all over the place whilst they were live on the air. And we're, as I say, 60 to 90 seconds before we're going on the air. Seth, I am in bits. I'm in pieces laughing. It's unbelievable, you know. And so that's one that springs to mind for sure. There's been several over the years of Major League Soccer where we're doing a game off tube, and I remember doing a game off tube that was at Columbus, and the Columbus Crew television truck that we were taking the feed from, there was a fire in the truck, so we lost the feed, and we're turning around all of a sudden talking about the game that's going on. All of a sudden, myself and my co-coms Kindra, the game comes on behind us, and it's just complete chaos, just complete and utter chaos. But all good fun, you know. This is why we love live broadcasting, you know, because of the unscripted, raw nature of it, particularly in the games as well. Studio shows can be a little bit more managed, I think, but certainly live commentary, there's nothing quite like it. But I had a situation recently at CBS actually when we were doing something on the New Golazo network, which, by the way, I recommend for anybody that's a soccer fan in the US to have a look at it, because it's a service unlike anything we've actually got in the United States, in the sense it's a 24/7 soccer channel. But we were doing a show, and there was all sorts of topics that we were supposed to do, and all of a sudden Kylian Mbappe decides to announce that he's going to Real Madrid, or at least the reports started to circulate. So everything was abandoned, and that was very much live TV on your toes. But good fun, Seth. It's almost like an addiction, live television is, you know, and live broadcasting. It's a thrill. It really, really is. And you know, I'm sure I'll think of some more stories one day when we have a beer or two. But those are the ones that I can think of right now, and that they've all been hilarious to be involved in.
Absolutely. All right, last thing. It's prediction season. I think it's probably the thing that we hate the most. Everyone's kind of like, put you down, give us your top things. I'm going to ask you just a few questions. Just give me a yes or no. You can give me an explanation, but we just make this nice and quick. Do you think Messi wins an individual award this year, Golden Boot or MVP?
Oh, yes.
Does Inter Miami win a trophy this year?
No.
Does the New England Revolution make the playoffs this year?
Yes.
Did the New England Revolution win a trophy this year?
Wow, you're killing me with that. No, I'm sorry.
Does Carlos Heel return to the New England Revolution next year?
Yes.
Hey, not bad at all. I think those are very good. Just gotta hit you with a few of them, you know, not too many. I think this is a common thing that, you know, this is a tough one to do, but you're a great sport as always, Callum. I appreciate you taking the time. This weekend, you'll be at Audi Field alongside friend Kalen Carr for the game against DC United. The New England Revolution starting their MLS season down there in Audi Field, and you can watch it for free on MLS Season Pass. But of course, sign up for this entire season. Watch all the games, all the chaos, all the fun. Be an MLS sicko just like me and Callum. Callum, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Seth. Really appreciate it.